Well, it turns out that what I've experienced, and I think pretty much everybody in this room has experienced, is creative downloads. Like when you were like taken over by flashes of insight, have you all done that? I mean, it just happens, and they're good feeling things. They must release dopamine or something. We just like them. And Albert Einstein was one of those guys. He had what he called Gedanken experiment, which were thought experiments, but it was more of a reverie or a trance for him, because he'd been working on something, and suddenly he actually in one case was describing it coming through his body. He's taken over, and he's in a virtual world, running alongside a beam of light, and it's very, very vivid, and it seems to be coming from outside. It's not entirely his own cognition. So he kind of popularized that idea of the creative trance. And when I was a kid, I would read books about Einstein and whatnot. I thought that's how science was done. And in fact, in my first walk in the wilderness, thinking about the origin of life, I had my first download, and it was this bundle of molecules in front of, kind of hanging here. I was 13 or 14, and I was like, oh, hello, you must be my first download. And what do you do with that? It's a thing. It seems like a creature or something, but is it a projection of your own mind, or what is it? And so I said, okay, I can talk to it. I can get a little frustrated with it. Like, you're confusing. Everything's like sticks and balls are moving, and it's like a model of molecules, but I don't understand. Try to get more clear. And what's driving you? Is there gears and cogs? It's just like this thing is just seething. And then, surprising to me, it asked me a question. It said, figure out how I made a copy of myself. I was like, whoa, what? And it just comes into your consciousness. Figure out a copy. It's not really a voice. It's just sort of a thought comes in. And then my mind went off to like an automobile factory. Like they're making TR7s. This is in the 70s. Terrible sports car. But TR7s are being made, and there's a huge machine called a factory, and they're moving the parts along, and there's guys, and there's maybe robots someday. And that's not plausible. You're just yourself. There's no factory. How can you make a copy of yourself? It's a nonsense idea. And the bundle of molecules kind of winked and said, work on it. Yeah.
The follow-up question on McKenna, do you think Einstein tripped too?
I think he endo-tripped on his natural juices. More on that in a minute. So I was a trippy kid. I sort of believed in these things, and I started having these hypnagogic visions when I would close my eyes, and I drew thousands of pictures of these worlds and all kinds of stuff so I could keep the system online. And in my 20s, I turned it into my profession. So I could visualize code. I wrote an entire graphical operating system this way, on DOS, without any debugger and no memory management for Xerox, that introduced the mouse and Windows to corporate people. They'd never seen it in the 80s. And I went on to do virtual world stuff, and all of the NASA work and design of the spacecraft is all done through this kind of natural tripping. And I was totally, there's no way I was going to touch that machinery with drugs. Just no way. I didn't really, apart from living in Prague where beer is free and doesn't give you a hangover, I didn't even really touch alcohol. So I didn't take aspirin. If I took Robitussin, I would hard trip. I gotta stay away from Robitussin. So I was completely like, I don't want to mess this, what I now call endo-tripping, natural tripping machinery that just comes online, and I get taken over, and it's wonderful. And then I met Terence McKenna when I was 36, I think, 1998. Met Terence McKenna, and he and I looked at each other, and I thought, this guy's amazing. He has an amazing intellect, and my God, he's a beautiful guy. And he wanted to meet me because we were doing virtual worlds and avatars and stuff. And I said, put him into these virtual worlds. And for him, it was the invisible landscapes made real by language. And it was a beautiful share. And he came to our house in California, and then we went see him in Hawaii. But while we were there in Hawaii, he complained that he was having terrible nightmares, like just beyond. He said, they're so strange, I don't know what to do. Something's happening. And it was months before he had a grand mal seizure, which led to the diagnosis of his glioblastoma, which at the time and still now, there's no easy way out of that. So he was gone. He was gone in 2000. And I really missed him. One of the things he gifted me was to open psychedelic space. So he provided me a source of mushrooms, and I took a very big dose. And if you listen to Terrence, one of his pieces of advice is get a scale. So I had no scale, and so I said, well, it might not even work. I'm just going to eat the whole bag, you know. And I had an exo trip. I had a stunning experience that was absolutely horrific at the beginning and terrifying. And then it opened up into a vision of the cosmic, literally the singularity happening. It was phenomenal. I was totally, by the morning, I was just a different human being, really. I sat on a pile of rocks next to this river and I'm complete as a human being on this earth, you know. And so I started this practice of going back. So Terrence passed away. I started this practice of trying different psychedelics, and I would initially do very low doses. And my endo-tripping system, I found a way to kind of turn it off, put it to sleep, because I still was worried about wrecking it, you know. And I think that technical or intellectual people, probably it's what keeps them away from these really strong psychoactives. So I was really cautious for the first 10 years. Then I started getting down into microdoses of ayahuasca. And I found a magic place where the tryptamines were not going to just slam me and put me into the dishwasher. They were a partner, and I could talk to them. I could talk to Mother Ayahuasca, if you will. And I could bring my endo-tripping system full power, turn it on, and have them merge together and work together. And a whole practice emerged completely just for me. I didn't tell anybody about it. And I went through my healing because I was adopted out as a kid. And the whole rift that happens, adoptees are given away by their mothers, it's a whole deal. We are like 2 times or 4 times most likely to be hospitalized with psychiatric conditions. There's a whole thing that goes on. So I was able to go and experience that birth and heal that rift. Whether it's a metaphor or it's real, I was liberated from the hard knot in my belly. So that happened, and I noticed that as each healing event happened, more could be revealed. I was a smoother flowing system, and this came online in a way better way. It wasn't trying to prove anything. It wasn't agitated. It was, oh my God, it's open. Like I'm open down here, so I can be open up here. I had tremendous access. It kept getting better and better. And then what I did was started going to the Amazon. This is me down in the Amazon. This is a flute that I would play. So this is a bit of a different thing than you thought you were going to hear about tonight. And this is my little tombo with my little candles to find the way home. So I did about 36 ayahuasca experiences over about 4 years, mostly in the jungle, but one time with Dennis McKenna, who's Terrence's brother, in the Sacred Valley. And I explored deeply my own processes, my own healing. And then when that was completed at each time, each week or 10-day period, I would bring the question of life's beginning into the space. And it got clearer and clearer until one night I went through an amazing experience where I had loaded an endo trip of the early earth and the travel through time. So I was doing Richard Dawkins' Ancestor's Tale, where he goes backwards to ancestral join points all the way into microbes. And I ran that endo trip to load up the space, the sort of whatever space it is, with that question, and broke through a cloud and was in the little pool. And it was just a phenomenal thing. I became the protocell that first attempted division. It wasn't a waking dream. It wasn't like it was just a phenomenal, encharged, full 3D, joyous, totally crazy experience to have my body turn into this gelatinous mass of lipids and polymers. And I didn't have the answers. I actually blacked out, came to in a scream. And the scream was tied to my eyes seeing the tearing off of a bud off of my now gelatinous body. The bud was black. It had no living content. And the body that I was alive. And I could see polymers moving like piano keys. It was just astounding, absolutely astounding. And it was half Endo-Trip and half Exo-Trip. They were in really perfect partnership. So I actually wasn't spent at the end. So I literally stayed up all night, rewinding and re-experiencing that trip when I came back to my little Tombow, and asking the questions of what did I just see? And then 3 months later, this came. So I was sitting, just doing breath work, some yoga and some breath work. This is why I think a combination of mindfulness practice and psychedelics is really where the access point is. And this came into my consciousness. So I just finished the breath work, and I asked the question of how can we build a machine that simulates life's origin, and I fell into that pool again. But this time it was full, all of the factors, the protocells moving. This is the sketch I did right after it finished, about 45-minute download, or reverie, if you will. And it was turned into this initial sketch for the first publication, pages and pages of notes written to Dave. And Dave wrote back on like January 3rd of 2014, you found it, you found the kinetic trap. And that was the chemistry way of you found a system that can get ever more complex, that's realistic on the early Earth. And so this was the core insight. We call it coupled phases. And that was our 2015 publication. And I still have pages of notes. There's still stuff in there in that vision that haven't been worked out, which is part of the new astrobiology series that we're doing. So the question is, from visionary revealing to scientific hypotheses, maybe we can use some of these tools, mindfulness, breath work, which do change your biochemistry and your neurochemistry, but can we use tryptamine psychedelics? And in fact, if you read Brian Murarescu's book, The Immortality Key, that came out last year, a year and a half ago, it may be that our ancestors in Greece used the Eleusinian mysteries and an ergot derivative to initiate 1,000 people a year for 1,600 years, and they booted up the genius of civilization itself. So this may go a lot further back than we know. And so I came out of the psychedelic closet in Dennis McKenna's conference in May of 22, and sort of proposed that maybe the medicines of healing can also serve as the elixirs of discovery. And so I'm out of the closet. So these are just a few thoughts on this. Can we use an artful combination of these things to make breakthroughs in not only in science, but technology, design, even in leadership in our boardrooms? You know, there's sort of this meme going around that, you know, if we give MDMA to all the boards of directors, we'll get more humane companies. So that's a little bit non-specific and probably hard to pull off. But there's some thing that if they can be more productive and better, not only better humans, but better at their jobs, better COOs and better leads of groups, they will be living exemplars for the rest of us. Because they've done their healing, they can then do the revealing. And maybe these are two-part tools that can do that did it for me. And so for our times, we're coming into really big complexity territory. And that spire, we're up in the red zone. We probably need tools like this. We need to manage them well, though, because they can cut both ways. So Humphrey Osmond in 1957 coined the term psychedelic to mean mind manifesting from the Greek. And it turns out that at the dawn of the psychedelic West in the 50s into the 60s, this is what they thought psychedelics were good for. Not just truth tools for the CIA or something like that, but Gerald Hurd in the first article in the Psychedelic Reader, 1963, asked the question, can this drug enlarge man's mind or people's mind? And suggests that narcotics numb the mind, alcohol unsettles it. Now a new chemical called LSD has emerged with phenomenal powers of intensifying and changing it, whether for good or for ill, is a subject of hot debate. And he points out that in his experience and from others who are taking it, that it's the unique quality of attention which LSD can bestow, the state of mind which is the most evident mark of genius functioning. Now all of this thinking kind of fell on the sword of kind of a chaotic spread of LSD into the culture. And here we have Timothy Leary. Before this is where they got fired at Harvard, the controversies in the Harvard Crimson. I have a lot of Timothy Leary's papers, so I was able to go through and find all this stuff. And but in 1963, just after Kennedy's announcement, a newspaper from some source at Rice University where it was done announced that, well, naturally, NASA's going to use LSD to train the lunar astronauts. And there was a study done by Lewis Harmon involving Myron Stolroff and Jim Fadiman, who's still with us. He lives in Santa Cruz, and he's the father of the microdosing revolution, where they took 23 professionals and gave them mescaline or LSD, and they worked on problems. And it's a breathtaking study. It lacked controls, modern controls, but it was highly suggestive as a pilot study that these are tools for professional use. And then come 1966, criminalization, everything just stopped. And now we're here in 2024 with MDMA going to come off Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 probably in a year. And so it's going to go into clinical therapy off-label, and we'll have psilocybin shortly after that. The Swiss are really working on LSD, Swiss federal system. And so we decided to form a new nonprofit that here in Austin, because the studies are returning. This is one published by Mason et al. About enhancement of cognitive function. This is a wonderful review by Sam Gandy et al. So there have been 6 or 7 good publications on this in the last 4 years or so. And so the psychedelic assisted innovation idea is returning, and I suggest that it is a combination of natural endogenous ability in an individual, whether it be a 15-year-old or one of you are here in this room that might have this ability, and exogenously applied states to help to work in synergy in a safe way. So it's a practice that we could actually test and share with others. So can we come up with a practice that might combine meditation with a psychedelic? And there's a great film called Descending the Mountain. It's directed by a friend of ours about a Swiss Zen center which where they gave lifetime meditators psilocybin. It's a beautiful documentary if you want to see the things that are happening there. So wrapping it up here, we are introducing the Center for Minds, which is coming out with the support of and the lineage of our friends at MAPS, that you may know this organization, which stands for Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, which has led the charge for the MDMA use back in society. So MINDS is called Multidisciplinary Investigation into Novel Discoveries and Solutions. And we will have 4 pillars: the scientific research, and perhaps starting with a local university here. We're in negotiations or in discussions at least. And a community, find the others. We started a survey on our website and people are filling in like, yeah, I have a practice, so I'm happy to share it. Perhaps down the line an academy where people can get mentorship and training. They can go through things that I found by accident, but they, parents that have a child that's kind of on the spectrum and really kind of brilliant, but where do they go? Who do they talk to about the visions that they have? How do they land those visions into really productive lives where they get validation for their capacities. That's a really important one for us too. And lastly, protocols, safe protocols to publish around using powerful high-octane tools with the mind that also involve the heart. and really formalizing the practice beyond therapeutics to performance and vision and just actually having fun, with having fun with neurons. And it's based right here in Austin. And some of the founding team members are here. And we've been meeting with potential donors all week. We'll be at South by Southwest. We have a wonderful panel there. We're going to be at the Eclipse Festival, a whole program there with maps. If you're going out to Eclipse in a few weeks, and you can find out more and contact me or the rest of the team here. We're calling it Psychedelic Assisted Innovation, and there's the QR code for it, and you can just centerforminds.org. So thank you very much.